Jim, I understand you are the producer. You also co-producer, head to head in the music supervision, and you also help with archival footage.
Correct.
And Bobby, judging by the jacket, I have a lot of questions. Most of them have to do with the jacket and all of the paraphernalia that is on
It used to
them.
fit.
But you are a real life Donut Dolly.
In the flesh, yes.
Amazing. So, I guess the first question is, what an amazing story. I mean, I had no idea what a Donut Dolly was up until seeing this. And what a complex story that is. Ups and downs, so many different emotions there. For the both of you, tell us how, Bobby, how you came to become a Donut Dolly. What drove you to become that? And then Jim, what got you involved in telling this particular story at this particular time?
Here you are.
Oh, start? Okay. Well, even the beginning is a little complex because, I'm sorry, can everyone hear okay now? Yeah. Even the beginning was a little complex. I have an older brother who was stationed, he was in the Air Force and he was stationed in Korea, and he dated a Donut Dolly while he was in Korea, and I was still in college at that time. A few years later, I met a fella at Fort Lauderdale on spring break, and he was just coming back from Vietnam. We ended up engaged, but I had this really freaky experience at 11 o'clock on a Tuesday morning. It occurred to me, and I was teaching English, my first year in high school teaching. 11 o'clock, almost time for lunch break, and I thought, my God, I'm going to get married, I'm going to have children, and I'm going to teach adverbs for the rest of my life. And I just couldn't do that. It was very hard on my fiance because he thought I was absolutely crazy. He had had 2 tours. And he came back wounded. But I was just driven that I had to do that. I had to do this for myself. There was a lot of selfishness in it because it was a great adventure. I came from a relatively poor family, so the only way I could get to see the world was to volunteer for Vietnam. But I love my country very much. I come from a military family, and I saw that as part of my duty, something I could give. Both of my brothers went to the academies, but I couldn't because I was a woman. So that's how it started.
I guess I'll take over.
Well, goodness gracious. So where did it start? Well, it all started with Dorset. In a former life, I worked at a non-for-profit music organization. And Dorset showed up on our doorstep one day. And she said, "How can I help?" And she ended up being there for at least 5 years. She was our first volunteer, and she dug into everything. I mean, she would do anything for the organization. She loved music, she loved volunteering, and obviously we now know why she loved volunteering. And I guess it was Christmas of that year, she decided to bring her family to the Christmas party. So I met Norm Jr., the filmmaker, the director here, Norm Sr., and also Tegan, who kind of did some behind-the-scenes stuff for us as well. And boy, you know, that was 25 years ago or so, and we're all still, you know, connected. And this story, I didn't even know about it until, let's say, about 6-7 years ago. And Norm said, "I think it's time to do this film." And there you go. That's where it began.
This kind of started from the footage that began sort of in like the mid-90s.
Yes.
That Norm first started doing this. Had he been working on the film that entire time, or was that just more for fun of just kind of documenting something?
Well, you do see that. I think the earliest is 1998 in the opening sequence, where they're stocking up for lumber for the winter. We all know what that's like. And so he started then, and I guess around that time of his, high school graduation, freshman year of college, he learned more about his mom. About this experience. He knew that she had gone overseas. She mentioned something vague about going to Vietnam, but then it came about when they were doing some property cleaning and came across the shed that had been destroyed by a bad winter of snow, and she pointed out to him that these were her pieces of memorabilia. And so it really started there. And, from there, he went to a couple of the reunions for the Donut Dollies. I think 2 of them they went to. They also joined together at the Women's Memorial dedication in 1993. Yes. So actually, so it kind of predates the opening scene, but yeah, it's been an ongoing thing, and it just became time. It just became time.
Oh, yes, please. Sorry.
I have to say my heart really went out to Dorset, watching her going through the ruined books. The Sayonara books and the farewell books were such treasures to us Donut Dollies because they were heart-to-heart gifts from one another that nobody else could understand. And some of the things that, they were all cut out magazines and stuff like that. And they were inside jokes that
I've seen some of them.
maybe only we would understand, but
Yeah.
nobody else in the world could understand those books the way we could. And I have 2 of mine that are still in pretty good shape, and I look at them every now and then, and it really brings back wonderful memories. I wish I could share mine with her.
Yeah.
Well, sayonara books and memorabilia and how things, got ruined and destroyed. It's interesting that the relationship that some of the Donut Dollies have with that time, with that experience, they had very different ways of connecting to it. Some kept their memorabilia, and they're so proud of it. Some have donated it to museums. But I was able to amass about 4,000 photos. And some women that I contacted said, I came home, I put the stuff in a box, and then about a year later, I just threw it away. And that story actually happened quite a bit. A lot of women just disposed of their materials, or in moving, they lost it, so, it's the relationship to that experience, and everybody had a different experience. And I should point out, so the Donut Dolly started in 65, ran to 72, and the Tet Offensive, which was the big turning point in the war, women that served beforehand had a lot of freedom. Women after that, it became really tight, security and what have you, so very different experiences on either end of the spectrum.
Were you before or after?
I was 70 and 71.
Okay.
So you were after. So, Bob, I the movie kind of touched me in a special way because it had that complex emotions, and I think that the part that stuck out to me the most is towards the end, where the one woman says, "What we did was so silly. We didn't make the sacrifices that they did." And I never felt that, like, just watching the story, I never felt that it was such a special thing that was happening, and that was reflected throughout the movie from the soldiers that were interviewed, saying what it meant to them. Even like, hey, here they come with their silly games, but we loved it. I really want to hear your experience. I mean, we saw a few perspectives from it, but I really want to hear your perspective of how you felt about
not only, I mean, I'm a younger man, I've read about war, I've seen movies about war, I've never experienced war. I just kind of want to hear your version of that complexity of being proud of what you were doing, but also the hardships of it. How did you balance that even then and then all the way till now?
I think Dorset and Mary said it pretty well. Some of the other gals that, God, where did you get all that video? It's amazing. They said you do what you have to do. And we didn't really have the time to think about what we were doing or what we were feeling, and we were constantly reminded by the Red Cross that you are here for the men. You don't have time to feel sorry for yourself. Keep it to yourself. And I think this is a phenomenon that happened with a lot of the officers too, because they were supposed to be looking out for their men. So we repressed a lot of the bad stuff, and we remembered the good stuff and laughed about the good stuff. And there was some crazy stuff that we did, like water skiing behind a Boston whaler. It didn't come out in me until 10 years after. And I had a pretty bad case of PTSD, and it wasn't like, you know, the guys, when they would hear a truck backfire, they'd drop to the ground. It wasn't like that. It was just, I started crying over things, the most ridiculous things. I remember one big session was over a Tide advertisement on the TV. I sobbed for about 20 minutes after the Tide thing, and I decided I needed to get help. And it wasn't until then that I understood that I had repressed all of that for so long. And the ladies said, it never really goes away. You can't be that age and see those things. I look at the faces of those young men. I had my younger brother was he was in high school the year that I was over there. He was a senior, and he was hoping to get into the Air Force Academy. Every one of those kids that I visited, I thought, this could be my brother. This could be my brother. And the hardest was visiting the hospitals. They didn't require that we visit the hospitals. That was kind of that was up to you. That was volunteer. And of course, I volunteered for everything. I even worked on some projects that the Red Cross wouldn't approve of, like drug rehab centers and stuff like that. But I went everywhere where I thought it could help. The comment about how much stricter it got after Tet, yeah, they were pretty hard on us as far as she talked about getting in trouble for holding the bottle up. I mean, silly stuff like that we thought nothing of it, but the Red Cross got very upset about those things. So yeah, it goes on, and I'm still working on my PTSD, but trying to work it out through a novel right now.
The Donut Dollies, everyone who served through the Red Cross are civilians. They do not get VA care. They're not considered veterans. There's some motion trying to get some kind of recognition, but I hate to say, in a lot of instances, it's too late. And also for a lot of our, our veterans as well. And just one thing to bring about. So, there was, in the recreation centers, or when they went out to the fire bases, they brought along the games, but in a lot of instances, the game wasn't what that needed to happen. And I think that was said here, that they would meet with the guys. They would go around and see the guys and listen to them and be a shoulder to lean on. And in a lot of instances, what they were doing was they would see the men before they were heading home. So they were hearing experiences from these young men after a year in Vietnam, taking all that I'll say psychic energy, you know, all those stories upon them. So the veterans, you know, God love them, and they have their experiences, and they're difficult, and you know, they try to live with and get through. But that's a solitary story to that individual. To the Donut Dollies, they have more stories. They took on so many more stories, and it just boggles my mind. I've heard so much, and you know, and thank you. I thank you for being here and for sharing, and this is wonderful, wonderful.
I would like to second what Jim just said. Thank you so much for your service, and I do mean service. This was a service to the men who were over there fighting, and I think that shouldn't be, or that should be built up. And so what is next for Donut Dollies? I think, like I said, I didn't know anything about this, and I think a lot of people probably didn't. I believe it was 130 that they said it was
627.
627 total.
Term.
Okay.
I think 130 was the highest number in the country at one time.
In country at one time. Okay. So it was still, even 630. That is still a relatively small number of people that just kind of, I guess, it just flew under the radar that so many people hadn't heard of it. So what is next to bring awareness? Because I think that this is something that should be absolutely celebrated and just brought to people's attention. So what is next for the both of you? I understand you're writing a book.
Yes.
That's amazing. Are we going to find out about all these wonderful things that are on your jacket here?
Yes. So
Okay.
just about everything that's covered in the movie, I've got it in the book. It only took me 50 years to do it.
It was well worth the wait, as far as I'm concerned. So, I mean, thank the both of you for being for the service that you've had and for helping to bring this story. So, what is next for Donut Dollies?
Okay. Well, you know, I have to do the shameless plug. Hope you don't mind. But I know people will want to find out more about this following the screening. So you can go to donutdollies.com, DONUTDOLLIES.com, and then on Facebook, it would be the Donut Dollies is what you would search for altogether. Now, Bobby actually took part in something that we're very proud of. We have 60 in their own word history stories.
Meet the Donut Dolly.
Yeah, Donut Dolly details. So if you do go to donutdollies.com, up in the upper tab, Donut Dolly detail, there are 60 stories, 10 questions. Everyone answers the same 10 questions, and you can see, you know, basically, you know, when they served and what have you, and photos and all like that. And we also have stories from some of the Korean War Donut Dollies who preceded. So in regard to the film, we've been doing this film festival run, which, you know, is, you know, been, COVID happened, you know. We did win Best Documentary. We've been nominated for 2 awards here, which we're really excited about, and other nominations. So we're right now working on the actual streaming release. We're going to do it self-release. All that information will be on our social media platforms, and then also DVD as well. And now, Bobby only made one appearance, you know, in the end credits, but I put together about, I think it's about 40 minutes of bonus features of other pieces of other interviews, and tons of photos. And you're in there a couple of times. I know that for sure.
You can give Doug's book a
Oh,
plug too, because I got 40
well,
minutes.
here. You do better.
Doug Bradley was, he was in single court, as I recall, over there, and they often asked us if we would come and do public service announcements or whatever, and I did that. And we kind of got in touch through the whole circle of Donut Dollies, and he wanted Donut Dollies stories for his book about the music and how music saved people in Vietnam. And it's called Who'll Stop the Rain? And he gives me 4 pages in that book where I really get to tell my story. And he also included one of my poems about PTSD and how it affects you so many years later. So I highly recommend that book. It's a good read. And I want to say one other thing about the Donut Dollies. You can tell from the video, we're not so young anymore. It was way back, but a lot of things have changed for women. And I think that the Donut Dollies opened a lot of doors for women in the military especially. And I'm very, very proud of that. My husband always said, you can tell the pioneers by the arrows in their backs.
And Bobby makes a great point. So many of the women went into teaching and counseling and, you know, just all kinds of arenas. Some actually joined the military and attained, oh, you did?
Yep.
Well, thank you.
30 years.
30 years, my goodness.
I'm 89, one of the first women in Pennsylvania to do that.
Wow, wow. All right.
You can call me Chief.
Chief, oh, that's right, yeah, Chief Trotter, that's your,
Chief Trotter.
yeah. I won't give that away. But nonetheless, you know, high ranks and what have you, and just so much dedication. And in fact, Holly Van Fleet, in the film here, she was one of the first 5 women that were admitted into the, I want to say it's the Secret Service. She was one of the first 5 that were taking on, and you know, I mean, these women attained so much. You know, whatever they got from this service in Vietnam, they took and just ran forward with it, and bless you, you know.
What an amazing story that we should have known a long time ago, and now we do. Thanks to you guys. So thank you, Jim and Bobby, everybody.